chapter 1, I know this is chapter 1, but this is the continuation of chapter 1 for scientific method and experimental design. That's what we're going to be covering for the next couple slides here. So what is science? Science, I know this, like I said, seems odd. We're on week 7. You guys are just learning about what science is. But it does kind of fit to what we're talking about with scientific method and, gathering information, becoming more knowledgeable about different subjects, because science is basically the understanding and the knowledge of our natural world, or our world that surrounds us, whether it be here on Earth, whether it's in outer space, just everything. So it's the knowledge that we gain from it, what we learn, how things work, what things are made out of. Pretty much that defines what science is. So you guys have all these branches of science that are associated with...
Ms. Gilbert?
So I'm sorry I was interrupted. Ms. Raymond came in. So you guys have all these branches of of science. All of these things that you guys probably will encounter sometime here at Plymouth North, maybe in college. Your science fair projects fall into these categories. Definitely a possibility, but like physical science, that's basically the mechanics of everything. So physics and chemistry, how things work, what things are made out of. Earth and space science, I think that pretty much is pretty self-explanatory, but geology, what the Earth is made out of, the space with astronomy, with planets and stars and everything. And then life science is what you probably will encounter more, and that is, like ecology, which is the environment and ecosystems and things, botany, which is plants, zoology, which is animals, and genetics, that is our code, our DNA, what makes us up pretty much. But you guys will encounter some of these in biology class, some of them in this class, some of them in, like I said, other classes that you'll see at Plymouth North. All right, so I'm skipping over this. I told you I'd do this again with you guys with the pictures and stuff, but we will do this, so skip over the slide. All right, so scientific method. What is it? Sorry, I went too far. So what is it? It's the step-by-step process that basically explains how to solve a problem. Experiments are basically problems. They are situations where you're trying to find a solution at some point, but you have to follow this kind of step-by-step organized plan so that you come out with results that are reliable. You kind of systematically go through to find different answers, and so that's what we're going to be talking about. So the first step of the scientific method is you guys have to identify a problem or a question. You guys have to basically figure out what it is that you need to be solving. All right, so the problem is usually in a form of a question. So like, for instance, if I want to see if plants grow better with fertilizer, it's which fertilizer makes plants grow the best, pretty much. Step two is sometimes overlooked, and actually you guys are going to have 5 steps listed here, but we're going to actually list 6 of them out. So the second step is this research/observation type of step. You guys did this when we went to the library. You guys were gathering research about your science fair projects. You kind of have to have this background information before you guys can go on and finish your experiment. You have to kind of know what's going to, about these things. So if you are doing something with plants, you guys have to know a little bit about the plants before you experiment on them. So that's step number 2. So observations, things that you see, research that you guys gather. Step 3 is this hypothesis. It's this formulating this educated guess. I'm sure you guys have heard that many a times, many years. This educated guess is essential to kind of make a prediction before you guys do the experiment. You guys can't just willy-nilly run the experiment. You guys actually have to guess what's going to happen, and that's what this hypothesis is. I, in my other classes, like to say they need to be an if-then statements. So for instance, like if I change my fertilizer to organic, then it's going to make the plants grow faster. Right. Usually it's if I do something, then this is going to be the result. However, you guys can actually state your hypothesis just as a statement, but it does need to be a kind of a clear cut, you know, prediction and, you know, what's going to be the outcome. So you guys are going to change this number 3 to number 4. All right. The 4th step of the scientific method is going to be the actual experiment itself. All right, so you guys actually have to conduct the experiment now. You guys have to, you have some background knowledge. You've, you know, determined, you know, some variables, which we'll talk about in a minute, and now you're going to run the experiment. What is going to be the 5th step, so you're going to change this number 4 to number 5. The 5th step, after you've run the experiment, you guys have to analyze your data. This is like the most kind of misconstrued step, because analyze your data is kind of very vague. It's like, well, what does that mean? Well, analyze your data kind of encompasses a couple things. Right? You guys got to look at trends in the data. So, for instance, do your plants grow 2 inches every day? And why do they grow 2 inches every day? You might need to find the average of different things. You might need to figure out the standard deviation of a whole bunch of data. You guys basically are organizing the numbers. You're looking to see if you see patterns or trends. This also involves you guys making charts and tables and graphs. Sometimes that's the best way to see data and to see kind of these trends and different patterns is to actually see them in a graph or a table, them a little bit more organized. The 6th step, so what you're going to change is 5 to a 6. The 6th step is going to be the conclusion. All right, you guys have to actually not just summarize what happened in the experiment, but you guys also have to go back to your data and specifically explain if your hypothesis was supported or not supported by the data that you guys collected. Okay, so it's not just summarizing, you know, this experiment was about, no, you actually have to start referring back to your hypothesis and then using some data in that to actually make this conclusion about what happened. So the slide here just kind of goes through the steps that we just discussed. You know, kind of referring back, like say your hypothesis was rejected, you guys can then go back and do the experiment over again. All right, so characteristics of a well-designed experiment. You guys are going to be writing a experimental design or a research plan for your science fair project in the next couple of days. These are the things that we're going to be looking for. So when you do your science fair project, or any experiment really, you really only are supposed to test one variable. One variable is a controlled experiment. This way you know that that one variable that you changed had an effect somehow, whether it, you know, was negatively or positively. If you start to test 2 or 3 of them, you start to get a little bit fuzzy because you don't know which one can, you know, made the results happen. So one of them is important. Hold on 1 minute. There's a lot of breaks in this these notes today. I know it doesn't seem like I was gone, but I was just gone and I'm back. All right. So you guys have 2 different variables that you guys have to deal with in your experiments. And one of them is the independent variable, and one of them is the dependent variable. Independent is the one that you control in the experiment. So if I go back to my plants and the fertilizer, I control the fertilizer. All right, whether the plant's going to get it or not, or what type they're going to get. But I have control of that. So that's the independent variable. The dependent variable is the one that you are looking at as a kind of a result of you changing the independent. So in the case of the plant, you guys are basically looking for plant growth, right? By changing the fertilizer, the plant growth is dependent for that variable. So that's why it's named that way. Now, in class, I know we used the examples of homecoming, and I'll go back to the homecoming example, I think, a little later. But I just wanted you guys to realize that I didn't forget what example that we used. The other two things that we need to talk about are constants and controls. Being a well controlled experiment, you're only testing one variable. Well, when you test only one variable, you have to leave every other basic other thing or other variable in the experiment alone. You have to leave them the same. And so we call those constants. So in the plant example, if I'm changing the fertilizer, I have to know everything else that makes plants grow. I need to leave the same throughout the entire experiment. So the water that it gets, the the soil that I use, the seed or the plant type I use, the flower pots they grow in, the amount of sunlight it gets, the amount of carbon dioxide that the plant gets. Basically, everything about the experiment has to stay the same, other than the fertilizer changing, because that's what my independent variable is. The control is the part of the experiment that you have to compare your results to. So for instance, if I'm growing plants and I want to say fertilizer is going to make them grow better than what? So you have to have a part of the experiment where you are growing a plant without fertilizer, because you need to know if that plant naturally grows that way. So you're going to compare your fertilizer part of it to those ones that are just growing naturally. So the control is going to be usually part of the experiment that doesn't receive the independent variable. That's usually how I go about it. So you were given the homecoming dance example in class. So homecoming coming up on Saturday. I think I gave you guys the question. The problem was, who are you going to take to homecoming? So if I look through and I try to figure out, I do some research. I have to research pretty much who do I like, who's available to go, who doesn't already have a date, matching outfits, all those good things. Then I state a hypothesis. If I ask so-and-so, then they're going to go to homecoming with me. Straightforward. Then I run the experiment. All right, experiment can be, actually asking someone to homecoming dance. Then I'm going to analyze my results and then make a conclusion. If I look at the variables for that example, all right, my independent variable I have control over is who I ask the homecoming. Okay, the dependent variable of that is who's going to homecoming with me. That's the result. The constants could be everything else that has to stay the same. So the environment that you ask them in, the clothes that you're wearing, if you're wearing cologne, if you have nice breath, pretty much everything. The control in this experiment is kind of hard to determine because you're comparing it, but it would be like somebody that you've already asked out because they're going to say yes. You've basically already asked them some specific way. All right, well, maybe that way is going to work again, and that would be who you're going to compare your results to. Okay, so I know there's more notes than this, but I will record the second half of these when we get to those the next day. Bye.